Thanks again for having me. I think I'm going to see you for a third time next week. You'll be sick of me by the time you guys go back to your respective countries. Thanks for Bruce for getting me in. You know, every semester, every couple of semesters, I get invited by Bruce or Claudia Green or Larry Bridwell to come and talk about my business, which has taken a bunch of interesting twists and turns. Business, one of the biggest things that I've learned is that you can write all the business plans you want. You can use that as the guide or the playbook, but then you also have to remain very, very flexible and look for and see opportunities and start adjusting your business around that. I always like to sort of give a little bit of background, which Bruce already did, about where I came from and what I did and where I am heading. And I can say that one of the interesting things that had happened when I was at Pace, back in early 2000, that's how far back I was at Pace, if Bruce was one of my professors, was an opportunity to win a travel grant. And the idea was to help take a bunch of Rumit students to Africa, to Uganda, and to Tanzania. And Tanzania is where I grew up, and show them what those countries are doing to help their economies and meet international business types and local and regional Mengi and those folks. Unfortunately, due to several circumstances, that particular trip did not run. But I think a few years later, Bruce took on the opportunity to say, well, Rumit is there, he's already done the research, he's got the contacts, and Bruce, myself, and 15 students, around 15 students from Lubin, I think they were second-year students. Graduate students, ended up in Tanzania for about a week or 10 days with a safari and everything, and ended up meeting really high-powered people, former ambassadors from the United Nations, folks like Regional Mengi, who started from absolutely zero, a guy who grew up in a small village in northern Tanzania, who's now one of the largest media holders in Tanzania. And I sort of went back into my architecture field for a few years, absolutely hated it. At that point I realized that I had been sort of changed as a person, having spent 2 years at Pace. And the travel bug had already got into me. And one of the things that triggers businesses, in my opinion, is that there's something that happens, a circumstance or something you've heard or something you've seen that starts an inspiration in your head. And my inspiration was 9/11 had just happened. I just started at Pace as a business school student. I was given an opportunity to show people what the world is like, and the United States was very different. 9/11 had happened, and people's perception of what the world is going to be like was stay at home and stay secured. And I realized that there was an opportunity to actually show people what the world could be like and do a lot of cross-cultural type things. Very similar to what you're doing by coming to the US. And here I was trying to tell people, it's time to go and see the world. That's the only way I think we, as a community of global citizens, can work together and make something happen. And Pace University provided that opportunity. And since then I've been helping build my business. Do I press forward or red button?
Hit that one.
There you go, all right. So I've been in the business I've been in the business since 2004, around that time. But my company, Immersion Journeys, I started it in 2009. Prior to that, I was helping somebody else form a business, and I left him and I started my own. And over the years, I call this my wall of fame. A few wonderful things that has happened in my business is National Geographic Traveler recognized us for 3 very, very unique programs that we were doing. The Tanzania Tourism Board, within a year of me starting my business, decided to award us for a tour operator of the year. And then South African Tourism, who's one of my biggest partners and supporters, I would say, gave us a recognition as well. One of the things I've learned in business is you can never go alone. You can start, but you need a team. And the team could be your wife, your girlfriend, your husband, your kids. your partners in the industry like these folks. And if you can showcase these guys who you are and the authenticity that you're providing, you can easily convince anyone that they should partner with you. Right now we have a 50-person trip with South Africa Tourism, for example, going to South Africa for a jazz festival. And South Africa Tourism has actually paid us a little bit of marketing money to market this to thousands of people across, and about 50 people have signed up, and they're leaving next month. So those are some of the things that you should consider as future entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs, is how to forge these kind of alliances. You cannot do it alone. Yes, you can walk into a bank and borrow a lot of money, but when you're a small business, it's very hard to convince funders to fund. I am not a unicorn, as they say. I don't have $1 billion investor behind me. It is exactly everything you see that I'm going to talk about is strictly using my own money. I've never had to borrow it from anyone because my business doesn't require that much money. It's a very low capital investment to get things going, and the rest is strictly relationships and getting your word out and things like that. So here we are in 2017, 8 years later since my company started, where I feel today, standing in front of you, that we are now getting much more recognition than we were a year ago and even the year prior to that. It's a ton of work that goes behind it. Do you know who this guy is? This is a civics lesson for the international students. His name is right here. Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, I would say, is one of the first travelers who hired a travel agent. You can see it from his itinerary. When he finished his presidency back in 1900 and something, he was him and his son and a couple of buddies went out and said, we want to go to Africa, and he was a big hunter, so he went hunting. And this is his itinerary, and I get tickled by it when I see it, because it literally says he's going from Naples to Aden and Aden to Mombasa, and there's a whole plan and how many miles it is and what it does, whether he's taking a railroad and how he's going to travel by camel or caravan or railroad or car or going to carry him. Frankly speaking, 100 and something years later, this is what I do. We prepare programs and experiences and ideas. We now have planes and we have buses, and we still have a camel opportunity in Egypt, for example, to take people. But we literally sit down and we plan experiences. My company is not your typical fathers and mothers travel agency where you walked in and you sat down and the guy says, where do you want to go? And you go, I want to go here. And he pulls out a brochure and he says, I think you need to buy these particular products. And he said, great, here's my credit card, and you pay, and you get on a plane or a ship or wherever and you go. We literally spend hours and hours and hours talking to clients and talking about what they want to see. And the main reason is in the 21st century, clients are a lot more savvy. There was so much more information at their fingertips. By the time they call you, they pretty much know 75% where they want to go, possibly where they want to stay as in the types of hotels, and what they want to do. So when I'm doing Africa or India or Sri Lanka, wherever I'm taking my clients, I have to be very careful that I am listening to them first and getting what they want, and then create a product around that. And that's what, as Bruce said earlier, the couple of niche markets that we found, is how do you listen to a client, how do you get the information you want, I'll get to you in a second, what kind of information you want, and how do we build the experience and the product that will fulfill your requirements and bring you home much more happy. People tend to not do that in India too much. They get afraid of too many people around them, so they just like to stay in a group. We tend to do, I would say my business is about, I would say 75 to 80% small groups, families, private, 1, 2, 4, 6 people, and another 25% is groups. We also do a lot of universities. Harvard Business School case is one of them. Yale, Babson, Stanford, I'm working with them right now. So we do a lot of academic groups as well. But those are a lot more sort of structured and designed, and get up at 8 and get out of the hotel at 9 and things like that. So right now, Immersion Journeys works mainly in East and Southern Africa and a little bit in West Africa. And we do India and Sri Lanka and Bhutan and Nepal, which is in the Asian region. I'll talk a little bit later about a new business, a new brand that I just started earlier this year, which is mainly focused on South America. So the niche that we're looking for when I started the business was what is my specialty? I don't want to do the whole world. I don't want to be a generalist. I want to be a specialist. And that's because we recognize very quickly, based on very quick market research, that people prefer to work with somebody who specializes in what you do. If you want to go for a brain surgery, you go to a brain surgeon. If you want to go to a foot surgery, you go to a foot surgeon. You don't go to a general doctor. So you start getting into those kind of niches, and that sort of helps to develop products that people really want, and get the experience that they want. So we very consciously made a decision very early on that this is the only areas we're going to do it in. I grew up in Africa. I'm of Asian origin, so I can do India very comfortably, and that's all I'm going to do for many, many, many years. That's what we did. And like I said, I'll talk about this new brand shortly. Bruce mentioned it's an extremely competitive market, and we are working on, we're working with, if somebody calls me, typically they'll probably call 2 other tour operators. And they tend to, people start immediately thinking of pricing. My average safari, if you look on my website, starts at about $2,500 plus airfare, and then it goes up from there. So how do you deal with this? You're entering a competitive market. You love what you do. You're passionate in what you do. But you're dealing with people who've been established for decades. Abercrombie & Kent is one of my biggest competitors. They've been around for 60 years. You're dealing with highly, highly specialized people who've been doing this a lot longer than I have made names for themselves, have databases that are 30, 40,000 customers over the last 20, 30 years. And they can sell in their sleep, basically. So you think long and hard, and there are moments where you go, okay, how am I going to do this? And how am I going to make it work? You realize very quickly that this entire business of hospitality, and that includes hotels, restaurants, tour operating, it's strictly based on trust. You can show them the best website and the best of everything and the best looking linens and towels, but at the end of the day, it's all about the trust and ownership of what you're selling. Do you believe in that particular product? And if you believe in it, your passion will speak for itself. Customers are very, very quick. They pick up passion very, very quickly. And most of our clients, of which, by the way, 99% of our clients, I would say, come referred to us. Very rarely do we get clients who will look for us on our website or will come across us on our website. I don't do Google search ads. I have social media, but I'm embarrassed to say I have less than 1,000 people on Facebook. I have like 600 maybe. I'm not even getting to the 600. I think it's 585. I don't believe, frankly, in mass commercial marketing. One, I don't have the budget for it. But more importantly, because we are so specialized in what we do, you also don't want too many people calling you randomly all day and, frankly, wasting your time. We are looking for people who are very interested in going to places that we sell and want to talk to us for who we are, and that is the niche market. Now, it's a very tough way to start a business because I think most of us are trained to say, well, if you're selling a product, you send it out to 1 million people, and hopefully 500 will buy this product. While on the tourism side, there was no way I could, one, go after 1 million people. So we had to slowly build the relationship, and that was strictly based on trust. You own the product, you talk about it passionately, and you are already in the market. And then you have supporters. Somebody like Bruce, who went on a trip, he saw what we did, and he talks to me, and he talks to 5 of his friends, and they talk to 5 of their friends, and it's, it's like hitting the like button on Facebook. You like, and it gets spread around. And that's what you do, because you don't have $1 million marketing budgets. You have barely $10,000 a year of marketing budget and maybe a few other dollars in your pocket left to go out and do it. Communication is very key with your clients. We work very, very closely with clients. We talk to them. On average, I would say we probably have about 100 emails between clients before the client even gets on a plane, multiple phone calls, and we're constantly communicating with them. We also have to know our product, the infrastructure, accommodations, air routes. We have to know the product. It's not, we are working in Africa and India. The challenge is developing countries. You know, one flat tire on a safari can destroy half a day. What systems do we have in place? And as soon as you start showing those kind of those systems, clients will feel a lot more comfortable. If you've lived here long enough, you may already know that United Americans traditionally we like more secure type trips. We're very careful on where we go and how we go and what we do. I think those who are coming from Europe and from Asia, you guys are a lot more rebellious when it comes to travel. You know, you guys can get on a bus and just go. If my client says, I just want to get on a bus and go, I'll have a heart attack myself because I always worry that they may end up in the wrong place. So we tend to also give our clients enough of a comfort to say, look, we're here to assist with you. So, and we have partnerships and all that. Of course, maintaining the quality and delivering is always key. Again, working in developing countries is hard. You know, you stay at a hotel today, and another client stays at it's the same hotel a week later. You'll be amazed that when you get the reviews back, two clients within a week of each other will say two completely different things. So how do you maintain that? You know, what I do is we go on yearly trips, inspection trips. You stay at hotels, you visit. You've got complaints, you deal with the hotels, and you create these partnerships where they know that if it's an Immersion Journeys client that is coming, that they need to provide that level of service. One of the biggest issues we're facing, or we have faced since 9/11, and this is how I started my lecture, is how do you change people's perception? Global uncertainty. You know our political system in this country. You've been watching the news the last 3 or 4 days, the behavior from the president on down. You have issues going on in Asia, you have issues going on in Africa. How do you know, we had an Ebola outbreak 3 years ago in West Africa. Believe it or not, an Ebola outbreak in West Africa meant that people refused to go down to South Africa, which is 4,000 miles away. That is the issue we deal with on a daily basis. We are in constant crisis management role. I'm facing an issue, a very interesting issue right now. A woman died of a hippo attack, right? You rarely hear of these things. A hippopotamus, she went on a walk with a guy with a gun. Not my client, fortunately. This is 2 weeks ago. And something happened, and the hippo attacked, and unfortunately, this 75-year-old woman died. It's all over the news. How do you deal with it? Well, you deal with it because you have a client calling saying, well, what if I get hit by a hippo? Well, one, you're in the bush. You can take an attitude of, well, you're going into the bush. You're going to be in nature. So don't be stupid. And if a hippo runs at you, you turn around and run the other way. You can always say that, but you have to comfort the client. So you're dealing with global issues. You're dealing with media that moves on Twitter as fast as Twitter does. You're constantly on the defensive mode, trying to explain to clients that things are going to be safe. Don't worry, you're going with us. And we create this kind of an atmosphere that gives them a level of comfort. Hopefully this hippo issue will go away at some point. I mean, I think the family will get their insurance money in. But it's a very, I mean, we all sort of look at these things and we go, oh my God, is this real or is this like fake news? But things like that happen in my business. One of the biggest issues we're facing today is climate change, environmental issues. And again, it goes back to our political system in this country. And how are we going to deal with climate change? We've pulled out of the Paris Accords, which means that we are no longer the leaders. The world's climate is changing. The wildebeest migration in East Africa is changing. We're having floods in Mozambique. We are having pollution issues in India. And how do we deal with these kind of environmental issues? So these are some of these, just you think about it as you're setting up a business. It's not just my business. It could be your business. I heard a few pitches last week on certain apps and social media stuff. All of these things sort of play a role. Finding investors for me was not a problem. It was money out of my pocket, but many of the things that you might do in the future will require some heavy investments, and trying to make a difference. And technology. You know, the biggest issue I deal with today, unfortunately, is TripAdvisor, or Google searches, or Expedia. I've been very fortunate. Again, I work in challenging countries. I can tell you right now, if you go to Expedia and try to plan a safari, you're going to fail miserably. You have to call me. It's a niche market that I've created because Expedia and those algorithms don't really function for the regions and the area and the destinations that I'm working in. You cannot go on a safari by typing in safari on Expedia and booking a hotel, because there's no way for you to get to that hotel in the middle of the bush. You'll still need me. So those are just some of those challenging things that come up with any business, and I say, this is what really triggered mine. I talked about experiences. The market that I'm in, people look for products. They're looking for something unique. They want to go ride a bike with an elephant. And how do you do that in a safe way? This is in Mashatu in Botswana. They actually provide mountain bikes. The elephant, by the way, is wild. It's not a pet. It just so happens as a marketing picture. People are active. Folks like you, as young as you, want to not only go on a luxury safari, but also want to do some active stuff. We're finding older people, older demographics. Today I have a 75-year-old who is extremely fit. They want to go to South Africa, and they want to spend 3 days cycling 40 kilometers a day. Try to ask my mother, who was 72, to walk half a mile, and she'll go, no, I'm tired. You're dealing with a demographic that is rapidly changing and wants to do yes.
So how do you address those people? Do you only do B2C, or do you do B2B and try to target other leisure? I would say, yeah.
We do strictly B2C, business to consumer. Our clients come directly to us. We do not work through other distributors or agencies because we are highly specialized in what we do. And it's very difficult to have a middle person and trying to explain to them, and then they try to explain to their clients.
But how do you do, like, if you target older population, as you said, like a couple of customers age 75, so how did they reach you? Do they have the same access to?
They reach me through referral services. Like I said earlier, 99% of my business is people who refer. Most of our clients who come have friends who've already gone with us or have heard about us through other things. We also got featured in New York Times last week. 3 lines of New York Times. I felt so proud of myself. It's all online, by the way. You look up, type in New York Times, South Africa, wine country, or something like that. And people can call.
B2B as well as like Harvard and... We
do B2B, yes. From a strict standpoint, yes. B2B, we work through major institutions, Harvard, Pace. They have an office that works, so we do a lot of that. So we don't deal with, like, if you're going on a student trip, I don't work directly with you. I work through an office that's at Pace. I think Brian Pugh runs that office and things like that. So that's the B2B side of things. But from a general consumer side, most people come direct. We go to trade shows like the New York Times Travel Show. I go to other trade shows where we meet clients face to face and they book through us. And over the last 10 years or so, we have developed an entire relationship and a reputation of having them call us. And then we do other outreach stuff. But like I said, majority is here's another experience. This is the Kate Winelands. This is Frank Shook. This is the 75-year-old probably in the next 2 months who's going to go. He's crazy. He's going to ride 30 kilometers a day for 3 days. It's amazing. They go into Frank Shook, then they do wine tasting, they get back on the bike. Then they go eat and they drink more wine, then they get back on the bike. And they go ride around, and then eventually I think they'll fall on the side. But these are the experiences we provide. It's unique. Other companies do the same thing, but we do it our way, and they do it their way. And this is where where the business model sort of developed from. How do you stay true to yourself, and how do you stay unique and separated from the rest of the crowd? Because it is a very, very competitive market. I told you about active travelers. I have, like I said, the 75-year-old. I have the 28-year-old honeymooner who wants to live in 5-star hotels but wants to do one activity a day, hiking and biking and rappelling, and we provide those kind of products. Food, culinary experiences. We're doing wine trips. We're doing jazz trips. And how do you find, again, it's back to the niche. If you type in travel or safari on Google, you're going to get, you know, a whole long list of companies. And that's who I'm competing with. I might not even be on the list. I could be on page 4 at that point. And how do you then separate yourself is what the niche is that we've been talking about for the last 10 years. And how do you package that whole thing? How do you bring a client into, let's say, India, they arrive, and you give them a tour, and at night they go and eat some really good local food, and then the next day they do something else. How do you put the full experience together so that when they come back, they have a complete idea of what that particular region was all about? And then they tell their friends or hopefully want to go back. And that's the key. And speaking of repeat clients, about 20, I would say at this point, about 20% of our clients are repeats, which is not a bad number, but I would like to get it much higher. You had a question?
How do you deal in terms of operation with very extreme or very special demand, like biking with an elephant? Does it require both?
We find the elephant first. Over the years, we developed, because of me and I have another person who works for me, between the two of us, we go inspect product, we assess regions, the new products that are coming on board. Hotels and properties and transporters and guides come and see us as well and say, hey, there's something really cool and unique. You know, they go on a safari in the morning by car, but in the afternoon they want to go biking in the bush, and there'll be a guide with them. And what you do is so a lot of times the products are already in place by that particular property. So an elephant with a bike, they already were offering that, so we buy into that. A lot of times we create our own, and again, it's constant product development all the time, and you spend many hours. I spend many hours thinking about what the client wants. I spend a ton of time on the phone with clients just to see what they want. Yesterday I got a phone call from a repeat client. He wants to do Bhutan and Sri Lanka, but he doesn't want to do this, he doesn't want to do that, he wants to walk, but he also wants 5-star, and you have to listen and you're constantly doing product testing, what works and what doesn't. And then you try it yourself. Because without trying it yourself, you're not going to be able to talk about it. Does it make sense? Culinary, food, wine, ride your bike around or go for a walk, and that's the experience we provide in South Africa, for example. Culture and heritage. This is a picture I took. I was in Western India. I was walking around in a salt desert, and in the distance I heard music, and there were these 4 guys or 5 guys banging away at some pots and pans, and there was a crowd around them. And I called my clients, and they'd never heard of it, and you make some spontaneous decisions, and you create a product. Now we take these guys. It's not the same people every year, but we know there's a festival going on at a certain time of the year. We've created a product based on it just by finding something. Safaris, I told you we do a lot of safaris by car, by bike, by walking, just some of the spectacular landscapes that people find. And again, it's all about how do you get people to get excited about something. And remember, you're also working, it's a product you cannot show. When you're talking to a client on the phone or even meeting them, you cannot show them, say, oh, this is what is, you can show this, pictures, but you cannot touch it and feel it. They don't know what they're going to get until they arrive in the country. And the moment they arrive in the country is when, hopefully, they will start seeing some of the same things. Some humor. Safety is very paramount for us. We work in extremely high-risk conditions, so please don't feed the lions. So, about the brand. As I said, we are working in a very, very, very highly competitive market, and how do you get your name out there? I can tell you that it is extremely tough. I'm competing against National Geographic expeditions or Abercrombie and Kent, or really, really huge companies that have been around. And what we immediately did was we started partnering, like I said earlier, with tourism boards. Say, hey, we're a small company, only 4 people, 3 people who work for me, and how can we help you promote your countries? And because of what they liked and what they saw, they decided to come on board. But then there are also, some of the relationships that we've created with trade organizations. I am one of the founder members. I'm an outgoing board member, actually, of this particular organization, Safari Professionals, which is 30 companies, very, very elite and high-end luxury safari companies, and we help promote Africa. We're doing between 30 companies, we do about $120 million worth of business just in Africa. You create relationships with tourism boards. Remember that tourism is a national asset. You have to work through government. It's not selling, you may be B2C, private to private, but there's an entire government and a bureaucracy that's behind it. So how do you keep relationships with many of these folks, because they can always come in handy. Local communities. One of the biggest issues we face, and we have faced for decades in the tourism market, is that the local community has always felt left out, especially in Africa. Big investor comes in, builds a $10 million lodge, forgets about the people who live around there, and brings in tourists from the Western world. That whole mentality is now also changed, and we have helped. My company plus many others have started to really push hard. When we go and visit a lodge, when we go and meet the management, we say, well, who are you hiring? These people, the waiters and the bartenders and the cleaners, where are they from? And if we get a feeling that they have been imported from somewhere else, that's not a lodge who I want to work with, because that means that they've not helped the local community improve their own living standards and hiring them. You're also working in developing countries where employment is low. Most countries have 30 or 40% unemployment rate, which is the official unemployment rate. I think it's more like 60%. So this becomes very important to how is a community being treated by a particular lodge. And there have been incidences where a lodge comes in, plunks themselves down, they build a massive lodge, and they've forgotten about the community. And the next thing you know, 5 years down the road, the community is saying, we want these guys out. And it becomes a major public relations disaster for me, which means it becomes a public relations disaster for me, because how am I going to explain to my clients that the place that they were staying in was not supportive of the local community? So think about that as you start your businesses. How are you going to keep the peace immediately with the people you're going to work around? Because if you can keep them happy, I can tell you right now that they are going to be your biggest supporters. I can walk into a lodge in Tanzania, in some of the lodges, because I've been going there for so many years, and I can tell you I can recognize the bartender because he's been there for 10 years, and he's the one who remembers me the most, because I send them so many clients, and they leave behind so many tips, and they buy so many bottles of beer from this guy. He's absolutely happy when he sees me. I mean, he gives me all free drinks for 2 days that I'm there, which is great, because that means I've done my job, right? And same thing, you guys start your businesses, and you have to think about that. Media has played a little bit of a role. I don't have a PR agency. It's very, very expensive to hire PR and marketing agencies in the United States, but partnerships have worked. Unfortunately, you cannot bribe a New York Times writer, but every now and then you can take her out for lunch and she'll hopefully write something. Like the one article that came out. It's online now, finally. And then what we decided to do as a company, Immersion Journeys did, we decided to also invest a little bit in West Africa, into an eco-lodge, and this is in Ghana. And that has become a very, very interesting project, because we wanted to get sort of what we call vertically integrated, where we can package trips to Ghana, the daily flights from New York, and it's a friend of mine, Andy Murphy, who's actually an American from New Jersey, who has lived in Ghana for many years, and he has this dream, talk about passion and how he started his business, of building Ghana's first ecotourism lodge. They have such lousy infrastructure there that nobody ever wanted to build a hotel except this guy. And he built a 25-room, he built a 25-room eco lodge in northern Ghana in one of the biggest national parks. And just today I read his Facebook feed, and they're having their best month in August, since they opened only 2 years ago. And they are pumping. They're 90% full. You have local Ghanaians coming who will be eager to come and see that. What they have done is their whole model for that particular lodge is how to get the local and regional Ghanaians and Nigerians who live around there to come to Ghana and visit their lodge and stay there, because there's nobody out there except these guys. For us, we vertically integrate. We can now provide not only the airlines and the local cultural stuff, but now if you want to go to a lodge, I am a small, tiny, very, very tiny owner of a lodge. I want to talk a little bit about that particular model, because there's a reason why I invested, or we in my consortium invested with them. When we first had an opportunity to talk to the development team at Zaina Lodge, which is the name of the lodge, and you can look it up online later, is that what was their business model? And they had a bunch of guiding principles that they wanted to bring into the business model themselves, which was very, very attractive to myself, who was in the tourism business, and two of my business partners in this. Historically, in most of Africa, there's been a huge exploitation of resources, and nothing was coming back. And what they did was to go in and they said, we're going to start a nonprofit foundation for the local community, and we're only going to train and only going to hire the local community, for example. So if you go to the lodge today, maybe the senior manager and maybe the accountant is from the different part of the country, but everybody else who didn't even know how to pour a glass of water to a tourist today is one of the most highly trained person you've ever met. That was very important. They had a very, very strong cultural and environmental policy, which fit very well with us. They had a low impact sort of policy on environment. They recycle everything. They hire only the community people. They have village walks, so everybody's making a little bit of money. They have a very strong non-governmental organization process, where they're working with a lot of local NGOs, foreign NGOs, local NGOs for medical and health and school and education and all that. So that's also tied in. And then we're providing, as I said, jobs here, improving people's lives. But more importantly for us was, what is new? Africa is already busy for most travelers, and Ghana was a very unique destination. And what are they providing that a lodge in South Africa is not providing? So that was a very, very clear idea when we read the business model to say, okay, it fits wonderfully well with the company that I run and what I want to do in the future. Here we are. This is some of the very similar experiences. Herds of elephants. I played a role in getting this car, by the way. These safari vehicles. There's a long story behind it. I'll tell you later on. Well, I'll tell you now. But we had to import them from Dubai, take them to East Africa to get them fitted for special sort of pop-up roofs and all that, and then they were put back on the ship, and then they sailed all the way up the west coast of Africa to Ghana, and they were driven 400 miles to the lodge. I think they gained like 20,000 miles by the time, from the time they left the dealership to the time that they were actually supplied 3 months later. Bush breakfast. This guy actually is one of the largest investors. He's a crazy Dutchman from Holland. He's like a 70% investor. Henry. I think he's just having his morning coffee there. Some of the bushwalks. Bruce, you recognize him?
The back of it?
The Sanjay.
Oh, is that okay?
You haven't seen him.
Sorry, you showed me his face.
Just some of the experiences that they provide, bushwalks and all that. Interior shots. And here is the sort of exterior, the main lounge of the lodge, some of the rooms and what they look like. The infinity pool has become one of the most popular places for people to visit. You can sit there and have sunset cocktails. And it's one of the most beautiful vistas. And it meets all the environmental rules that I believe in. Of course, the food is incredible. They've trained executive chefs that are producing some incredible stuff. So I told you earlier about my new venture, as if I have nothing else to do all day. I decided that I wanted to expand. If you ask me, the question has not been asked, but I might as well answer it before the question is asked. Is, well, why are you only doing Africa and Asia? Well, as I said, well, we're specialists. And then the clients start asking me, well, do you do anything else? Do you do Myanmar? Do you do Japan? No, we don't. So we started sending clients to colleagues in my industry. So here I was, a client that I had acquired, and client acquisition, and if you guys are already in some sort of business, you know how difficult it is to get a client to buy from you. Here I was giving clients away to my competitors who are doing other regions of the world. And we have a good relationship. We get a referral fee and we get a commission for sending them there. But the problem is you could lose that client. That client could go to, let's say I give it to Bruce and Bruce's company, and then they forget that they originally came from me. So here I am spending endless hours and years building a client base, and I could possibly lose it. But I don't have the, what we call the bandwidth to just go out and start a new product, because you have to be very careful on how your brand looks. Immersion Journeys is known for Africa and South Asia, and how will it look if I suddenly say, oh, well, now I do South America. So after a lot of debate and after a lot of thinking, and it so happened my younger brother was interested in leaving corporate America and becoming an entrepreneur. So I said, okay, so good. I now have somebody who was willing to carry the weight, because it's a lot of work, there's a lot of research and a lot of development, a lot of product. And we said, okay, let's start a new brand, which I'm 50% partner of. And we started a company called Kodiwampo Journeys. And the idea was to allow Immersion Journeys clients to now go to South America. And we started with just a few countries. Pretty soon we're going to onboard Colombia. It's the new emerging market. Colombia is aggressively moving into the tourism market after all the drug wars and everything have ended. And they're doing really, really well. So we just formed and we signed the legal deal. My brother's a heavy negotiator. So it took us 6 months to hammer out what he gets and what I get, and we just formed a company back in February. And the idea also is to give my current company, Immersion Journeys, a chance to vertically integrate even more by sending people to South America, but also to open up horizons in Australia and the Middle East and further into Asia eventually. That's the sort of the long-term vision. So what does this all mean for you guys? It really means that you just have to really bust your behinds. I mean, that's what I've learned in the last 10 years, that's a given. But more importantly, how do you, when you walk into the business atmosphere, what is it that you want? What is your credo? What is your motto? What is it that you want to serve the client? Mine was, I want to change the way they look at the world. I want them to change the way they look at Africa and other developing countries that I work in. And how do you give them, my other credo was, I want to give them an experience that's different from everybody else. And how do you develop a product that's around that? So, as entrepreneurs, as future entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs, it's something to just keep in mind, that it is not just a one-way street. There's going to be a whole bunch of people involved, ideas involved, and the constant shifting of agendas. But as long as you keep a sort of a general path that you know that you want to take, everything else sort of falls to the wayside. And by that I mean, it's very easy to, in my case, initially when I started the business, for example, to sell to anybody who called me, because I was hungry for business. The guy calls me, he's like, I work for a nonprofit agency, and I'm going to Nairobi, Kenya, and I only have $50, and would you help me? Yes, I'll help you, and I'll spend 10 hours trying to help this person for $50, right? And then you sort of, you backtrack a bit, and you go back to your business model, and you say, well, is this what you want to do? And you go, no. So you live, you learn, and you push that aside, and you get a little bit more selective on who you want to serve. and you start developing an entire product base around that. And as long as you stay true to what that is, it makes it a lot easier to then add and subtract stuff. In my case, the product experiences. So keep that in mind, because it's easy to get distracted to try to do everything for everybody. And I think that's my last slide.
Perfect.